Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk about the preservation of Quran. Muslims tell us that Quran has been preserved exactly today the same way how it was 1400 years ago. No changes, not even one letter. That's what they tell us. But the problem is what they tell us is not the same as what they discuss within themselves. When you go to their websites, you will see the preservation of the Quran is very, very questionable. This is Islamka.info English. You see this? Just read this one. This indicates that Surah Al-Azab was a lengthy surah like Surah Al-Baqarah, but most of it was abrogated. Remember, Allah sent verses talking about abrogation. He sent a verse and then later on he will abrogate it and he will change it with something else. Because many people believe this. This what many believe. Al Azhar was so long before. Now it's only 73 verses. Surah Al Baqarah has 286 verses, and according to this website, mostly abrogated. Now you know when it's abrogated, it is not in the Quran anymore. This is what it says. Therefore, Al-Azab only has 73 verses, mostly gone, abrogated. That's what they claim. We go to different website, amjonline.org, fatwa. Let us read the number one here. The narration of Aisha indicated that Surah Al-Azab was 200 ayat verses is a weak narration. It was narrated through Ibn Luhaya, and his narrations are rejected. So Ibn Luhaya was not a trustworthy person, so all his narrations are rejected. Okay, let's say we agree, this is true. Okay, no problem. Let's go to number two. The narration of Ubay ibn Ka'b that he forgot 70 verses of the same surah, Al-Azab, in which he could not find, is another weak narration. It was narrated through Abdullah ibn Suraik al-Amiri. And many scholars of hadith do not recognize him as a trustworthy narrator. So when he narrates what contradicts the consensus of the whole ummah regarding the number of ayat of Surah Al-Azab, obviously his narration is denied. Now pay attention here, okay? As millions of Muslims nowadays memorize Surah Al-Azab with their uninterrupted chain of trustworthy narrators that goes back to the Prophet himself. They are unanimous that this surah count 73 ayat only. So another hadith that is weak hadith that says Ubay ibn Ka'b said he forgot 70 verses is weak. Why? Because the narrator, one of the narrators, is not trustworthy. Abdullah ibn Suraik al-Amiri. And then another thing, millions of Muslims nowadays memorize Surah Al-Azab with that uninterrupted chain of trustworthy narrators that goes back to the Prophet himself. They are unanimous that this surah counts 73 verses only. All right, no problem. That's also no problem. Let's see the third one. This is this is so funny. This will be funny. Let's read. The only recognizable and accepted narration in this regard is what have been narrated by Ubay ibn Ka'b, that Surah Al-Azab was as long as Surah Al-Baqarah, or even longer. It used to have the ayah obligates stoning the adulterers till death. When Muslims trying to give you proofs, they often contradict themselves right away on the same page. They say millions of Muslims nowadays memorize Surah Al-Azab that goes back to the Prophet himself. And they are unanimous that the surah counts 73 verses only. And then suddenly, the very next sentence, the only recognizable and accepted narration in this regard is what have been narrated by Ubay ibn Ka'b. In bracket, Suratul Azab was as long as Suratul Baqarah, or even longer. How come? All of a sudden they contradict themselves. They say the number one and the number two is as if those narrators are not trustworthy. Don't worry about them. And then Surah Al-Azab contains only 73 verses. That's very strange. All of a sudden they change. On the same page, they contradict themselves. And now they say, well, the only recognizable and accepted is narrated by Ubay ibn Ka'b himself. That Surah Al-Azab was as long as Surah Al-Baqarah, or even longer, because the ayah obligates, there was an ayah obligates stoning the adulterers to death. That is not there anymore. Let us take a look. This is from Sunan Ibn Majah, hadith number 1944. It was narrated that Aisha said, the verse of stoning and of breastfeeding of adult 10 times was revealed. The paper was with me under my pillow. When the messenger of Allah died, we were preoccupied with his death. A tame sheep came in and ate it. Now look at the explanation underneath. These verses were abrogated in recitation, but not ruling. This is very strange. If the ruling is not abrogated, why the verses or the verse is abrogated? If you are a Muslim listening to this, ask yourself that question. See what kind of answer you can come up with and let me know. And if you are a Christian, pretend you're a Muslim and see how you can answer this. Because this is beyond stupid. The verses abrogated, but not in recitation only, but not ruling. How strange. If anything, maybe the ruling abrogated, but not in recitation, because the verse came down already. Let us take a look. Next hadith. This is now I want now we go to the preservation of the Quran. All right, this is very very simple. I'm showing you a very simple how the preservation, a very simple way how the preservation of the Quran is nothing but a lies and just myth that Muslims keep telling themselves. Sahih al-Bukhari hadith number 4999. Let us read. Narrated Masrik, Abdullah bin Amr mentioned Abdullah bin Masud and said, I shall ever love that man. For I heard the Prophet say, take or learn the Quran from four: Abdullah ibn Masud, Salim, Muad ibn Jabal, and Ubay ibn Ka'b. There are four people in Sahih al-Bukhari that people should learn Quran from. You see the name, the last name, Ubay ibn Ka'b. See, I will bring you back for a second. Number 3 here. The only recognizable and accepted narration in this regard is what have been narrated by Ubay ibn Ka'b. That Surah Al-Ahzab was as long as Surah Al-Baqarah. The first two explanations, they deny it. And the third explanation, they agreed with it. That's very strange, right? So Ubay ibn Ka'b was one of the best persons for people only to learn Quran from, according to Prophet Muhammad. So I want you to remember that. Let me show you something else. Here. Also, Sahih al-Bukhari, hadith number 5001. This is narrated by another person. Narrated Al-Qamah. While we were in the city of Hims in Syria, Ibn Masud recited Surah Yusuf, Quran chapter 12. A man said to him, it was not revealed in this way. Then Ibn Masud said, I recited in this way before Allah's messenger. And he confirmed my recitation by saying, well done. Ibn Masud detected the smell of wine from the man's mouth. So he said to him, aren't you ashamed of telling a lie about Allah's book? And you drink alcoholic liquors too? Then he lashed him according to the law. Which is pretty funny. Probably he didn't even drink anything. I don't know, it could be just from my point of view, but let's say this narration is true. As you can see, Ibn Masud was a very good person to learn Quran from. The best four, Abdullah ibn Masud, Salim, Muad, and Ubay ibn Ka'b. Now, when we go back here, this indicates that Surah Al-Ahzab was a lengthy surah like Surah Al-Baqarah, but most of it was abrogated. So that's why it's not in the Quran anymore. This is so stupid. This is, I don't know which Muslims come up with this kind of defense, because this is the worst defense ever. This is from wikiislam.net. I want to show you how, according to Al-Suyuti, Imam Suyuti, from the 15th century. He was born in year 1445, he died in year 1505. He was born well over 800 after the death of Muhammad. And he wrote this in this Al-Itqan fi Ulum Al-Quran as follows. Quran chapter 2 verse 115 is abrogated and changed with Quran chapter 2 verse 144. Quran chapter 2 verse 180 abrogated and it is replaced with Quran chapter 4 verse 7. This is so funny. I don't know where he got this from, because there's another problem with this which I will talk about it in my next video. Quran chapter 2 Surah Al-Baqarah verse 183 is now replaced with Al-Baqarah verse 187. Al-Baqarah 184 replaced with Al-Baqarah 185. Look at this. This is what I'm showing you is the abrogated verses is still there. It's still in the Quran. How come Surah Al-Ahzab, in Surah Al-Ahzab, abrogated verses are dropped or not in the Quran anymore? How come? This is very strange. Doesn't make sense. Like I said, even though it is abrogated, it's supposed to be still there. It's supposed to be there. Just because it's abrogated doesn't mean you can just take it off or take it out of Quran. And you have heard Muslims saying, many Muslims memorize Quran. Many Muslims memorize Quran. There's no way we can have different Quran. You see, as millions of Muslims nowadays memorize Surah Al-Ahzab. These days, yes, I don't argue that many Muslims memorize Quran. Doesn't matter they know the meaning or not. But I want to show you from Hadith something that is not written, but you should know. Everybody knows this Hadith actually. This is Bukhari, Hadith number 7191. Abu Bakar, narrated Zaid ibn Thabit. Abu Bakar sent for me, owing to the large number of casualties in the Battle of Al-Yamamah. While Umar was sitting with him, Abu Bakar said to me, Umar has come to me and said, a great number of qaris of the Holy Quran were killed on the day of the Battle of Al-Yamamah. And I'm afraid the casualties among the qaris of the Quran may increase on other battlefields, whereby a large part of the Quran may be lost. So I want you to understand, at this moment, Abu Bakr already realized that. Abu Bakr and Umar, they realized part of the Quran has been lost because many qaris died. You see the word qaris? Qari is people who can recite Quran correctly. If you are a Christian, do not be fooled. Qaris are not people who memorize Quran. No. And if you are a Muslim, you better read your hadith correctly and tell as it is. They lost qaris who can recite Quran correctly, not hafiz. Hafiz is a person who memorized Quran, every chapter, every verse. But back then, nobody, I repeat, nobody memorized Quran, the whole book, because nobody had the whole book. These days, you can get a kid 6, 7 years old to memorize Quran as long he doesn't learn about math, as long he doesn't learn about chemical, biology, physics. He can spend whole day for 6 years memorizing the whole Quran, no problem. He will memorize Quran. I don't argue that. Let's go back to the hadith narration. Again, the hadith number is 7191. So Abu Bakar called Zaid ibn Thabit. Now I want to skip and then go to the almost the end of the hadith. This is Zaid ibn Thabit talking. I found the last verses of Surah Al-Tawbah, verse 128 and 129 from Kuzaimah, and I added to it the rest of the surah. So Kuzaimah, for example, another Sahaba, he only managed to keep, to know, to memorize, or to write 2 verses from Surah At-Tawbah. And we all know Surah At-Tawbah has 129 verses. He memorized verse 128 and verse 129. What about the other 120 verses? He did not memorize it. He did not even write it down. He didn't even know what they say. This is the example. Now, keep reading a little bit more. The manuscript of the Quran remained with Abu Bakr till Allah took him unto him. Then it remained with Umar till Allah took him unto him. And then with Hafsa bint Umar. So this is where you must also pay attention. In that city, in that vicinity, in that area, in that Muslim province, there was only one Quran. The one Zaid ibn Thabit compiled. And then Abu Bakr kept it with him. When he died, Umar took that Quran and kept it with him. And then when he died, who's the next caliph? Uthman. But Umar did not give the Quran to Uthman, but he gave it to his daughter Hafsa. So now, Umar did not have the Quran. So from this Sahih al-Bukhari, 7191, there's another conclusion you can get. Another conclusion is Abu Bakr and Umar did not memorize the Quran. That's why they asked Zaid ibn Thabit to collect from bones, from fragmentary scripts, from stones, maybe little thin stones, they wrote it down, or memorized 2 verses, or 3 verses, or 10 verses, and collect them all. Why? Because Abu Bakr did not even memorize the Quran. And the same thing with Umar. Obviously, had they memorized the Quran, what would they do? Of course, they would just say, Zaid, I don't know how to read and write, but I memorized the Quran. You write down. And then Abu Bakar would just recite it. Or Umar would just recite it. But that did not happen. It did not happen because they did not memorize the Quran. Zaid ibn Thabit, same thing, did not memorize the Quran. There are people who can recite it nicely. And those people are called qaris. Another hadith, one more, last one. This you also probably you are very you know this hadith also very well. Al Bukhari hadith number 4987 narrated Anas bin Malik. Hudayfa bin al Yaman came to Uthman at the time of when the people of Sham and the people of Iraq were waging war to conquer Armenia and Azerbaijan. So they were trying to conquer Armenia and Azerbaijan. Hudayfa was afraid of their differences in the recitation of the Quran. So he said to Uthman, "Oh Amir, save this nation before they differ about the book, as Jews and Christians did before." So Uthman sent a message to Hafsa saying, "Send us the manuscript of the Quran, so that we may compile the Quranic materials in perfect copies and return the manuscript to you." Hafsa sent it to Uthman. Uthman then ordered Zaid ibn Thabit, Abdullah bin Az-Zubair, Said ibn al-As, and Abdurrahman bin Harith bin Hisham to rewrite the manuscript in perfect copies. Uthman said to the three Qurayshi men, "In case you disagree with Zaid ibn Thabit on any point in the Quran, then write it in the dialect of the Quraysh. The Quran was revealed in their tongue." I will stop there. This is another one. Another hadith that you can get a couple of conclusions here. I mean, first, he did not have Quran. This is exactly actually this what Al Bukhari 7191 says. Umar gave the Quran to his daughter, not to the next caliph. So the next caliph, the next pope of Islam, did not have Quran. Like I said in my other video about this, isn't it weird? The next caliph did not get the Quran. This is very strange. It is like a pope that doesn't have a Bible. You go to the Vatican, Pope, can you read me a Bible? And then he didn't memorize anything. He did not even know anything about Bible or own a Bible. This is very strange. And see what he told Zaid ibn Thabit. Collect again. I mean, like rewrite it in perfect copies with the help of three crazy men: Abdullah bin Az-Zubair, Said ibn al-As, and Abdul Rahman bin Harith. Remember, the, the four best people to learn Quran from, according to Al-Bukhari 4999, is Abdullah bin Masud, Salim Mu'adh, and Ubay bin Ka'b. And these four people are totally different. And Uthman, very easily, okay, if you have disagreement with Zaid bin Thabit, just write it in Quraysh, in the dialect of the Quraysh. Many Muslims said also Zaid ibn Thabit has a very good, like perfect knowledge of Quran. So how can Abdullah bin Zubair and Zaid bin Al-As and Abdurrahman bin Harith could disagree? And Uthman knew about this. Do you understand my point here? If Zaid ibn Thabit was has the best knowledge of the Quran, nobody should be able to disagree with him in the first place. There's no room for that. There's no room for disagreement. This is very strange, right? So this is the problem with Surah Al-Azab. Supposed to be as long as Surah Al-Baqarah. Ubay ibn Ka'b said so. And millions of Muslims memorized Surah Al-Azab, and millions and billions of Muslims agree that Surah Al-Azab supposed to be has only 73 verses. But then one person, Ubay ibn Ka'b, said supposed to be as long as Surah Al-Baqarah or even longer. And this is also narrated by Aisyah too. This is the kick, right? And on top, to put cherry on the top, actually, the last two hadith I showed you, showing that no Muslims, even the Sahaba, memorized the whole Quran. Memorizing the whole Quran, like what Muslims claim, oh, everybody memorized Quran. There's no problem. Yeah, right. So if everybody memorized Quran, why would Zaid ibn Thabit collecting Quran from people? How can Zaid ibn Thabit collecting Quran from people, like collecting the fragments of the, like the script? And some of them actually from they wrote on the stones, on the leather, as you can see here. This is what he said. So I started, this is Zaid ibn Thabit. So I started compiling the Quran by collecting it from the leafless stalks of the dead palm tree, and from the pieces of leather and hides, and from the stones, and from the chest of men who memorized the Quran in the bracket. This is when it says Quran, the whole, not the whole Quran. This is couple of verses. Look, for example, the Kuzaimah. He memorized only two verses. I don't know if he memorized it or he just wrote it down, but two verses. Anyway, it's only two verses. And Quran, they say they have, well, depending whom you ask, Quran has over 6,000 verses. The exact number is depends on whom you ask, right? So imagine memorizing two verses out of 6,000 something verses. Just wow. I hope the slides I show you today will give you a better understanding about the preservation of Quran, about the lies, the myth, and things that they don't tell you. And something like even something small like the word curry, not harvest, curry. People who know how to recite Quran. Again, it's not necessary they memorize the whole Quran. They just they can just sing it better. That's a easy way to say it. Anyway, I hope my videos will open your eyes regarding preservation of the Quran, and thank you very much for listening. Whether you're Muslim or Christian, God bless you all. Have a nice life.